Hello, everybody. This is Frode and Noxious, and we're here to break down day number 1 of the StarSeries Season 2 Finals. We just want to walk through what happened with the matches, some of the favorite moments, and just some of our thoughts reflectively on how the day actually went. So let's just kick it off at the very beginning. The first match of the day, we had 6-0 versus Xie. And this is a Chinese player going up against a German player. But 6-0 not only just represents just Germany, but he also represents just Europe as a whole.
Right.
And I think he's one of the cream of the crop right now. He's top 3 right now in the Ghost Gamer rankings, and going up against a Chinese representative wouldn't be an easy task for the Chinese player.
Yeah, I think he's actually first right now with the adaptation with the score that happened today. Xie started off really roughly against 6-0 with the 2-4. It almost looked like a sweep at first. 6-0 ended up 3-0, and then might have been reverse swept, it seemed, and finally locked down the series. I think one of the interesting things from 6-0's lineup really is the Warlock that he plays. I think that's the deck that took me the most off guard of everything they played.
Yep. He brought a very interesting Zoo Warlock variant where he plays Young Priestess, a 2/1 mana card that gives you +1 health randomly, and then Argent Commander, Argent Horse Rider. The fact that he's also not running Power Overwhelmings is very fascinating, and it comes with this philosophy that he just wants to make sure that whatever he's drawing, he can usually play instead of hold on for another situational use.
Yeah. It kind of fights for the board all the time, right? Like, it always wants to stay on the board, hence all the Divine Shields, and keep... Even Lance Carrier is in the deck, which seems so ridiculous, but like in the world where most warriors don't play enough AoE, then suddenly even your 1-health minions stick, and they demand an answer that sometimes involves pinging.
It makes sense considering that most Zoo Warlocks these days are stuck holding Leroy Jenkins, Power Overwhelming, Sea Giants. You're just stuck like life tapping a lot because you're trying to fit them in the right times. He just wants to be able to play his hand very well.
And I think that makes cards like Defensive Argus live a lot more often. So it was a really interesting deck from 6-0.
Yeah, we got to see that in action. I think he won pretty much all the games he played with it today and advanced 2-0. He did end up going to play against Stan Cifka in the Winners Finals. We'll talk about that after our second match, which was Jab versus Stan Cifka. Now, Jab comes in here as the only American player, and some pretty high expectations for himself just because his recent team has disbanded, and there's no better time to put yourself out on the market than at a premier tournament and trying to win, put yourself there on the map. So this was probably a big event for Jeb.
Yeah, it was actually a very, rocky game he had against Stan Cifka. There was a game where he played the Tempo Mage very well throughout the series, or at least throughout the game, and then at the very end made really one epic blunder with mirror images kind of coming into action and punishing him a bit too much. But that was one of the big moments of the day, actually, where suddenly a possible sweep or comeback just got completely negated.
Yeah, Yaxaron gave Jab some hope in a matchup that just is usually hopeless, and Jab didn't capitalize on it. I think he was a little bit too hesitant, overthinking some things, and really costed him that game and ultimately the series.
Yeah.
Sure, he did end up losing 4-1, I believe, so it wasn't exactly super close.
Sure.
But with every game does matter. If you look back against the 6-0 versus Xie, that first game, Tempo Mage win from 6-0 was huge. It just ended up being the reason why he was able to take it forward.
Right, because we looked later on, this last series that 6-0 played, where he started off with everything else but Tempo Mage, and then at the end he had to start winning with that one deck, and he got completely 0-3'd on it, and that might have been this downfall. So there was maybe a chance that Jab could have taken it if he focused a bit more.
Specifica, in the meantime, played rather immaculately, I think, for that series, all things considered. The only person to bring Rogue to the tournament, pretty fascinating from my perspective that Rogue has really fallen off its horse that dramatically. I always think that Rogue will get some representation, but only one person out of 8 players. In my opinion, pretty disappointing just because I love seeing Rogue as a class.
Yeah, I think Stan Cifka was also, when I was talking to him before the event, he said Rogue was the class that he expected, as the 5th deck, I guess, kind of always to be brought. He said, I don't expect that much Hunter. Maybe compared to Rogue, he expected a ton more Rogue than even Hunter in the metagame, which also prompts his deck building to be a little bit different. And it was good and right, I think, up until the end where he played against another player who had a slightly different approach to the build-up.
Sure. That goes into match number 3, Cifka against 6-0, which was another really good series, I think. Up until the final moments, I think there were some awkward plays with 6-0. I think the Druid versus the Tempo Mage specifically, where I think 6-0 is even self-critical of his own plays, thinking that he was a little bit too conservative. A little bit too aggressive and should have just been more conservative. Like, he was frostbolting face, hoping he would get Fireball off the top. Ends up getting Water Elemental and Archmage End tonight.
Yeah, like he drew dry like twice in a row, which ended up like costing him the game.
Man.
Yeah,
he felt like he was just destined to draw it, but
it
happens.
Get it. Yeah. It's kind of like the gambler's luck, right?
Yeah, or the gambler's
fallacy.
It's gonna
happen. Yeah. Gambler's fallacy. I'm gonna eventually make it up, but no, it didn't happen.
Yeah. So 6-0 ended up taking the series, though. And this is something that Firebat was talking about a lot. Firebat did go home for the day, but he did a good job casting. He was talking about how Temple Mage just tends to struggle in the current format because it doesn't find footing as a good sniper deck. It doesn't have amazing polarizing matchups. It doesn't have it doesn't even necessarily lend itself to consistency because you're so dependent on early game draws and you have so many spells. Even a card like Yoxtron, you can get early game and just not have anything to do.
Yeah, like there's kind of two ways the deck pans out. When Firebat and I were talking about this, is either you play like Tempo Mage where you curve really well with Mana Worm and Sorcerer's Apprentices, or then you have the option of going for the Archmage play. The issue is you've got these two game plans that can sometimes merge into an awkward hand that's trying to do both at the same time and then nothing happens. So it's really, really awkward as a deck right now.
6-0 ended up sending Sivka to the loser's bracket. Sivka still felt pretty confident because he told me before the match that he felt like 6-0 was favored. So
beforehand, with the lineups alone, just on the back of that,
it is what it is. You can take second place. Going to the fourth place match for elimination, we had Jab versus Shuishui. Now, Jab kind of wanted to pick up his result a little bit because he played pretty rocky, and unfortunately, it didn't exactly happen. That fourth game, Jab got rocked.
Completely, yeah. It was rough.
It was just like, small things that end up leading to big things. For example, Jab was really aggressive in this one Tempo Warrior versus Cthulhu Druid game, and then Cthulhu Druid just came out of nowhere, punished him with Ragnaros, and it just felt like completely unnecessary for Jab to be that aggressive. But it came off of the back of another game where he got Cursed Blade.
And that was also possibly a little bit tilting, where you might just be saying, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I'm just going to play cards. And you have this recklessness because you just want to win and seal the game to...
It was a roller coaster of a game.
For Jab, at least. I feel like it might have just been a really... painful event overall. It was quick. It felt like the last series was excessively quick compared to what it could have been.
Given the series in general.
Was playing. Yeah, exactly. Every single thing, every single match that was played with Jab felt, painfully quick.
Yeah, well, Shuishui took that relatively fast and played pretty solidly. And again, one thing that played into his advantage is that no one really knows too much about him. So he brought Arena Warlock. A lot of people were banning Warlock in anticipation for Zoo.
Right.
And that ended up being good. Like, imagine if Shuishui had the Arena Warlock. He has Hunter, and he has Tempo Mage. These are decks that are really good against that that deck. So imagine if he actually didn't ban it. He'd actually be probably very favored to take that deck down single-handedly and win the series.
Right.
But he doesn't have that info, so it's a really tricky scenario that you have to kind of balance.
Yeah, which was interesting because that also played into the last match of the day, which was Sivka versus Shuishui, where the lack of information meant that Shuishui was playing around a Reno lock from Sivka that contained Leroy Jenkins in the combo, but Sivka was not playing it, and so that ended up mattering a ton as some of the crucial cards were played a little bit too early. He still ended up taking the series. Shuishui is going to be moving on, but... It also, I think the whole information war in these types of events matters a lot in the group stage.
Yeah, absolutely, because people will figure out what decks will be played retroactively.
Right.
By day 3, you can go back to the VODs and watch everything. But for now, the surprise factor is very much real, and some people have got some interesting cards specifically slotted into their decks. And now that everything's been said and done, we have 2 players going through. We're going to see what's going to happen tomorrow for Group B. But once again, just kind of breaking down what will happen. We had 6-0 advance in first place, and our Chinese representative, Shuishui, the winner of I-League Season 2, is going through. By the way, more importantly for us as casters, there's a bet between 6-0 and Firebat. Firebat bet that Sivka would get farther than 6-0, and 6 ended up winning. And the reason why is because Firebat helped 6-0 practice, and he was like, "No, why'd you bring Tempos Mage? We agreed it was bad." And 6-0 was like, "No, it was good." And then it's like, "You're gonna lose."
and 6-0 was like, "Yeah, I almost lost, but I still win, so I win the bet."
So, some nice pocket change for 6-0 there. Group B tomorrow, we'll have Zoro. You might have seen him from last year's BlizzCon representing China, so he's back. Good job there. Against Dr. Hippie, who made quite the run in the Europe Winter Championships. Well, of course, we had the Europe Winter champion himself.
I was going to say, Neyman, right there down in the second bracket against Hoy. I have to say that Neyman is probably one of the most surprising players, at least in the initial qualifier stage. I saw him play a ton of aggressive deck that no one else really brought to the event.
Yep. And it's going to start tomorrow at 4 a.m. Central European time. We do recognize it's pretty early
but
for our European brethren. It's early for us, too. We're just doing an early broadcast, but we're trying to accommodate our Chinese partners as well. So keep that in mind. It's all happening here on the StarLadder English channel on Twitch. So make sure to follow us if you want to watch, or if you're watching on the VODs, just go ahead and tune into the same time tomorrow and you'll find it.
Right.
Other than that, though, that's pretty much a quick day one recap. So from Frody and Noxious, thanks so much, guys, for watching, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.